Voldemort was seemingly the most evil and powerful wizard in the Harry Potter world. Fighting him and his group of menacing Death Eaters was essentially the main plot of the entire series. However, for certain Headmaster, the true owner of that title was someone else. Dumbledore knew his former best friend and lover, Grindelwald, was just as evil and powerful as Voldemort, if not more. In fact, if given the chance, Grindelwald could have easily taken over the wizarding world faster than Voldemort could blink. Or could he have? What made Grindelwald so strong that he ended up triggering a global wizarding war? Was Voldemort's war against the Order of the Phoenix on the same scale? If we were to put Voldemort and Grindelwald against each other in their prime, who would win? Thing is, superiority over the other isn't solely decided on their sheer strength. There's a lot more at play here. While it is a fierce battle, I think we're going to end with somewhat of a conflicting debate in the end. Kind of how the Weasley twins wanted Ireland to win, but wanted Crumb to be the star of the show. There's just no picking sides here. Let's put the two most vile wizards against each other and see who gets to take the title. But before we get onto it, please subscribe to the channel and comment down below to let us know if you're enjoying our videos. Voldemort had a nasty reputation all around the wizarding world, and he was proud of it. Nobody dared even say his name out in public, for the fear of evoking a curse from him and dying the very next moment. Forget his real name, people wouldn't even utter the nickname he had given himself. This was precisely his biggest weapon: fear. He invoked fear in people to such an extent that even some of the greatest wizards were not comfortable with mentioning his name. Heck, even McGonagall refused to call him by his name, and nobody messed with Minerva McGonagall. But hiding behind all that fear, there was a sinister secret that cannot be ignored. Voldemort was incredibly ruthless, to the point that death for him was just a toy and weapon. It didn't matter whether someone stood in his way or not. His first instinct was to cast the killing curse on them, and step over the body without a second thought. He might even laugh about it, like a maniac fresh out of Azkaban. Like hitting a bludger in Quidditch, he had no problem in striking again and again, as long as he got what he wanted. But Grindelwald was a murderer too, wasn't he? Well, he was, but he was also fairly more humane than the Dark Lord, and that's saying something. He didn't use death as a weapon, and possibly didn't enjoy torturing people like Voldemort here. To put it simply, he was power-hungry to the core, and his objective was far nobler than that of Voldemort. This can be seen from the fact that Grindelwald only killed people if there was some goal hiding behind their deaths. So it's safe to say that in sheer brutality, Voldemort takes this one. Voldemort, by nature, was a coward. So much so that he was absolutely terrified of losing his life and couldn't even stand the thought of death. This is precisely why he felt the incessant need to create Horcruxes. He was so scared of dying that he decided to split his soul into not one, not two, but 6 Horcruxes just to delay the inevitable. And that's if we leave out the accidental Horcrux, Harry. On the other hand, Grindelwald did not fear death, and had no interest in being immortal. And again, while he was an evil wizard through and through, this trait also made him more nobler than Voldemort. He only ached for power while he was alive, breathing, and could savor each and every part of it. And when Voldemort came after him, he welcomed death with open arms and refused to give in to the Dark Lord's commands. Not like Grindelwald didn't know how to make Horcruxes. He studied at Durmstrang. He probably knew all the tricks and secrets of splitting his soul into bizarre objects, like a ragdoll or worse. Even if Durmstrang didn't cover it, he was deeply involved in some truly horrific dark arts, so figuring it out wouldn't have been too challenging. He simply chose not to go through the effort of making Horcruxes. So this point definitely goes to Grindelwald. He didn't have anything to lose, and that made him even more dangerous in combat than any other dark wizard. Let's take a look at the network these two evil wizards built around themselves. Voldemort had a pretty big line of followers behind him, but do you think they were loyal? A lot of people joined Voldemort only because he was the most powerful wizard of the time. They all feared him for the sole reason that they would end up dead if they even thought of defying him. Like we told you before, fear was Voldemort's biggest weapon, and he made good use of it to build himself a massive army. When they saw Voldemort slowly falling into his demise, they all started to flee. One by one, they all ran as if they were being chased by Hungarian horntail guys. On the other hand, Grindelwald worked smartly. He lured his followers by putting together a fancy speech. On top of that, he added a pinch of his charisma that eventually brought a lot of big names lining up behind him. He even managed to get our favorite headmaster on his side for a bit. Dumbledore was immensely impressed by him, and even ended up falling for the man. Safe to say, Grindelwald had some serious game. But ultimately, this point isn't about loyalty. It's about the army the two managed to conjure up for themselves. Grindelwald's charisma was infectious, but that didn't get him a long list of followers, unlike Voldemort. So we're gonna give this point to the latter. No matter how shady Voldemort's methods were, he still managed to get a pretty powerful bunch behind his back. Now, you might argue that this battle is to see who bags away the title of being the most savage wizard of all time, but there's a lot these two wouldn't have been able to do if they didn't have their followers behind them. Harry couldn't even get through one game of the Triwizard Tournament without getting help from his friends. This is the whole wizarding world we're talking about conquering. These two wizards surely needed all the help they could get from their followers. Now comes the juicy part of the whole debate. Who was the better duelist? Bear with us on this one since we can't just hand this point over to either of them. In hindsight, it seems quite obvious. Voldemort defeated Grindelwald, so naturally this point should go to him. But did he really? Grindelwald was in prison, both tired and old. If he was in his prime, would Voldemort have come out of this supposed battle like a proud winner? I'd argue that Voldemort wasn't exactly in his prime either. He was down to 5 Horcruxes by the time he met Grindelwald, but the Dark Lord was also on his way to conquer the wizarding world, and he surely had a lot of people behind his back to get him to the finish line. So, was it a fair battle? No. I definitely wouldn't bet on it. But it also doesn't change the fact that Voldemort did defeat Grindelwald. Now look, we might have angered the people who were rooting for Grindelwald to win this point, so let's bring in something that might throw the entire thing off. Grindelwald was kicked out of Durmstrang, the institute that bragged about teaching dark arts to its students. Grindelwald's idea of dark arts was so twisted and sinister that even Durmstrang didn't want any part of it. So, even with Voldemort's dark past, it seems like Grindelwald could have clearly taken over the Dark Lord. But something doesn't quite add up. It doesn't feel like a fair fight. The only way to truly determine the stronger Dark Wizard is to compare their battles against the one person who could stand against both, Albus Dumbledore. Dumbledore was the only wizard capable of taking down either Grindelwald or Voldemort. At least that's the general consensus, and something we've seen firsthand in the series. He held off Voldemort at the Ministry of Magic, giving the wizarding world just enough time to finally realize that, yeah, the Dark Lord had returned. As for Grindelwald, well, there's no denying it. Dumbledore defeated him. But there's a key factor that might have influenced the fight. Grindelwald had feelings for Dumbledore, which probably clouded his judgment during their duel. Now, this might be a canon concept, or could be fans yearning, but there's a chance Grindelwald, for all his evilness, was still very much in love with Dumbledore at the time of their duel. This maybe made him go easy on the future headmaster of Hogwarts, which ultimately ended up in his defeat. So, does this put us at a crossroads? Not really, and here's why. Grindelwald was the closest anyone ever got to matching Dumbledore's skill. Something even Dumbledore admitted to Harry. Even that Grindelwald was still in his prime when they fought, and despite his loss, he pushed Dumbledore to his limits. With that in mind, we're giving the edge to Grindelwald. He was in his prime when Dumbledore dueled him, and even though he lost, he definitely gave the latter a tough time. If you think we're on the right track with this debate, please subscribe to the channel. Even if you don't agree with us, it wouldn't hurt to spare a second and hit that subscribe button, now would it? Both Grindelwald and Voldemort managed to get their evil hands on the Elder Wand, but only one of them actually wielded its full power. Grindelwald used the Elder Wand to its true potential. He was able to use it to effortlessly overpower his opponents and cement his reign as a dark wizard. Voldemort, on the other hand, never truly unlocked the wand's true strength. Not because he was weak, but because he never really owned it. Here's the thing, Voldemort was relentless in the pursuit of the Elder Wand. He was also strong and ambitious enough to kill literally anyone he suspected of being its rightful master. He was ruthless, determined, and more than willing to break every rule to claim the most powerful wand in existence. But for all his efforts, he still failed to grasp the wand's allegiance. That's an embarrassing misstep for someone who prided himself on being the greatest sorcerer alive. Does that mean we automatically hand this round to Grindelwald? Not necessarily. Just because Voldemort never used the Elder Wand properly doesn't mean he wouldn't have been terrifyingly powerful with it. Had he actually bonded with the wand, he could have been unstoppable. So, are we at a tie? Maybe. Whether you agree or not is a whole other story, but hey, I'll go ahead and leave the comment section open for you if you want to come at us like Peeves tormenting Filch. Now, let's get to the final point, shall we? When it all came to brains, believe it or not, Grindelwald had the edge. If Voldemort's greatest weapon was fear, Grindelwald's was strategy. He didn't just terrorize people, he carefully planned his rise to power brick by brick. He played the long game and waited for the perfect moment to strike. That patience is probably what allowed him to conquer nearly all of Europe. Voldemort, on the other hand, was impatient to his core. Think Hermione before an exam. He wanted instant results and had little interest in waiting for a plan to come together. While he did manage to throw the entire wizarding world into peril for a bit, he never even came close to Grindelwald's level of dominance and influence. And let's not forget how Grindelwald resisted Voldemort as an old weak man who'd been rotting in prison for years. Dark Lord, the supposed greatest legilimens of all time, couldn't break into his mind. That alone speaks volumes about Grindelwald's strength. But that's not all. Not only did Grindelwald refuse to give up the secrets of the Elder Wand, but he mocked Voldemort right to his face, while the Dark Lord was standing over him with a wand in his hand, ready to kill him. That takes a level of defiance few could match. So, this round goes to Grindelwald. Voldemort was undeniably cunning, but Grindelwald was operating on a whole different level. If the two had ever clashed at their peak, Grindelwald would have given the Dark Lord the fight of his life. And with that, we're also giving him the title of the most evil wizard of all time. Agree or disagree? Well, that's what the comment section's for. Leave your thoughts below and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, smash that like button if you enjoyed the video, and press that bell icon if you want to hear more from us. I'll catch you next time.